Hey everybody, welcome to Out of the Overflow, a channel where we're going to read, review, and recommend good Christian material to you. I'm Miss Dorothy, I'm your host, and once again, I'm in the bookstore of Lighthouse Baptist Church in Winchester, Virginia, where our shelves are stocked with books that we believe would be a help to you in your Christian life. Each episode, we bring someone along who has chosen one of these books off the shelf and is going to read them and come back and review and recommend them to you. Today, we have Mr. Aaron Miller with us. Thank you for being here with us, Mr. Miller.
Absolutely.
Today, Mr. Miller is reading, he has read the book I Am Going, written by Daniel L. Akin and Bruce Riley Ashford. Mr. Miller, as we get started, would you mind telling our audience a little bit about yourself and what drew you to this book?
Sure. I have been a part of Lighthouse Baptist Ministries for quite a while. The Overflow is indeed new to me, and so walking by, I'd many times look at the books that are on the shelves. Many of them I do recognize. Some of them I have not read, but one that stood out to me was this book, actually, I Am Going. And I don't know why it necessarily did, but of course, the title is one of the things that caught my attention. But whenever I walk by, just all the books on the shelves, this one seemed to stand out. And so when I was asked to do a book review, this was the one that I thought would be appropriate to do.
That's interesting. So the book itself, the authors, Akin and Ashford, from what I understand, they emphasize the importance of living a life that goes beyond our own schedules.
Yeah, so that would be correct. This is an interesting book because it is written by two authors, and so the last names are Atkin and Ashford, but they refer to themselves as Daniel and Bruce. And Bruce starts off with the first chapter and does an excellent job showing how whenever he started. Basically his life after he graduated from high school, graduated from college, he went out and spent 2 years in Russia as not a missionary, but actually as someone who spent time teaching the English language in Russia. But what he found was that he was able to use that experience to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ in his life. So this idea of I am going is beyond really even the idea of missions. In fact, the premise is that we are all missionaries in some way, shape, or form. The chapter titles are starting off with I Am Going. That's just the premise of it and the introduction. Then it goes to I am going with my church. I am going to the nations. I am going to my job. I am going with my job, which is my favorite chapter, by the way. And then I am going anywhere. And at the end of every chapter, they also have a challenge to the reader to question themselves as to whether they are really going in regards to this idea of missions.
Wow, that's very interesting. So it's not a matter of I am going to be a missionary.
Not necessarily. I mean, missions is definitely the emphasis of this. There's no question about that. It's the gospel really that matters. And when it talks about I am going with my church, it's talking about, in fact, he says this, we cannot fulfill the Great Commission apart from the church. So it is talking about the Great Commission. It is talking about spreading the gospel. It is talking about the needs in other nations. And that's where it says, I am going to the nations. There are nations that do not know about Jesus Christ at all. Right. And we need people to go. And really, to be honest with you, that's where my favorite chapter comes in. I go with my job. Many times we think, okay, we have to give up everything and we have to go on the mission field as a missionary. And he actually proposed, he said it is possible, and likely it is even the will of God for Christians to reconcile two seemingly conflicting desires. And that for him, and this was Bruce, he said profession and mission work. Oh. He was actually, as he illustrated at the very beginning, he illustrated how he was able to go be an English teacher. And in fact, he said this, he said, listen, I didn't have to really present the gospel or go on a street corner. All I needed to do was be there because the subject of Jesus was just asked about. They asked about his life. They were interested in him because of what he did. And then they wondered, why is that Bible lying on the table? Why is your language the way that it is? Why do you do what you do? Why are you moral in the way that you are? And so he had every opportunity to share the gospel
without essentially going as a missionary, but it was part of his job.
Absolutely. Now, this book does encourage going as a missionary, but that isn't the only option. In fact, it says he gives a challenge. He says businessmen, scholars, athletes, coaches can greatly increase the spreading of the gospel over strictly being a missionary, because we can't send forth enough missionaries. We
Right.
can't really afford to do that. But many of these people, the businessmen, scholars, and athletes, they need to ask themselves, hey, could I go overseas? Could I do something like this and take my business over there and then serve not just to my job, but serve with my job?
Wow, that's very interesting. So to me, the book seems to challenge us to take action on multiple fronts,
Absolutely.
on the mission field globally and in our neighborhoods.
Mhm.
So does the book address like how we who stay right here in our hometown can be used in that way?
Absolutely. He talks about I am going to my neighborhood. In fact, that's chapter 3. Danny actually covers this chapter. And so he says every Christian is to be a great commission Christian. So the question is, how do I do my part? What do I need to be doing to answer God's call to action? And Jesus Christ answered this whole idea. Who is my neighbor? Well, your neighbor is anyone that is in need. Your neighbor are the people that are around you. It could be someone that you see every day. It might be someone that you meet only once. But we need to be ready to spread the gospel. We don't need to be so busy about our lives
Right.
that we don't step aside and say, hey, now is a perfect time to share the gospel.
And so when we get into the recommendation part of this, you having read this book, what age group, what type of person do you think would be interested in this book, and why would you recommend it to them?
I would say that this book would be very appropriate for any teenager
Wow.
and above.
Okay.
The reason is because it's going to give the teenager an aspect of, hey, listen, this philosophy of the gospel needs to be spread, even apart from the missionary aspect. I can be doing that right now. As far as what group it's applicable to, I think anyone reading this book will benefit from it. There's a challenge in chapter 7 that it's I am going anywhere. And Bruce says this. He says the single most significant thing that holds us back from going is that we continually are tempted to love false gods more than we love God.
Wow.
And that's, man, I tell you what, that challenged me.
Right.
We don't want to be false. We don't want to have our false gods and set up our life and not be willing to spread the gospel when the time is right.
Well, that's amazing. This definitely sounds like a book that our listeners would enjoy. Thank you, Mr. Miller, for being with us today. And for all of you wonderful listeners out there, thank you so much for coming to another episode of Out of the Overflow. Remember, we're here at Lighthouse Baptist Church in Winchester, Virginia. We have the bookstore here, and we would love for you to get a copy of I Am Going. You can stop by here, or you can click on the link below where you'll be directed to where you can purchase it online. And until we see you again, remember, keep reading, keep pointing people to Jesus, and thanks for listening. Bye.